Most people see Wendy's and think it was just another fast food chain that got lucky. They see the red logo, the square burgers, and the Frosty. They assume it was built by investors with deep pockets. They assume someone handed the founder a golden opportunity. But that's not how the story begins. This story begins with struggle and uncertainty. It begins with a young man who felt out of place. Dave Thomas was adopted as a baby and grew up searching for direction. He struggled in school and never felt academically gifted. Eventually, he dropped out of high school altogether. Many people would have labeled him average. But average people with extraordinary discipline can change the world. At just 12 years old, Dave stepped into the restaurant world for the first time. He wasn't wearing a suit or running the kitchen. He was washing dishes and cleaning floors late into the night. While other kids worried about homework and games, he studied customers. He observed what people ordered repeatedly. He noticed which menu items slowed the kitchen down. He paid attention to how managers handled stress during rush hour. Every shift became a classroom. Every mistake became a lesson. He learned that speed means nothing without consistency. He realized that quality creates loyalty. Without knowing it, he was building the blueprint for his future empire. The environment of a 1940 seconds diner was a chaotic symphony of clinking silverware and shouting cooks. Dave stood at the center of this whirlwind, absorbing the rhythm of the service industry. He noticed how the smell of fresh coffee could change a customer's mood instantly. He watched the way a seasoned waitress could manage 5 tables without breaking a sweat. To Dave, the restaurant wasn't just a business. It was a living, breathing organism. He began to understand that the back of the house was the heart that kept the business alive. If the dishes weren't clean, the food didn't matter. If the floors were sticky, the customer wouldn't return. He took pride in the smallest tasks, realizing that excellence starts at the bottom. By mastering the menial, he was preparing to master the monumental. This humble beginning instilled a work ethic that no Ivy League school could ever teach. By the time he turned 15, Dave was working full-time. He made the bold decision to leave school completely. Most people saw that as a limitation. Dave saw it as focus. He poured all his energy into understanding the restaurant business. He learned about food costs and inventory management. He studied customer psychology before that term was even popular. He understood that small inefficiencies quietly destroy profits. He became obsessed with systems. That obsession would later separate him from competitors. He wasn't chasing money yet. He was mastering the game first. Leaving school was a heavy cross to bear in a society that valued formal diplomas. Dave often felt the sting of judgment from those who thought he was throwing his life away. However, his classroom was the grease-stained counter of the Hobby House restaurant. He began to experiment with how to prepare food more efficiently without sacrificing taste. He realized that a menu with too many options was a recipe for disaster and confusion. He saw how wasted ingredients were essentially dollar bills being thrown in the trash. This period of his life was defined by extreme frugality and intense observation. He didn't have a social life. He had a professional obsession. Every dollar he earned was a testament to his survival and his growing expertise. He was becoming a scientist of the sandwich, calculating the perfect meat to bun ratio. By 17, he had more practical business experience than most men twice his age. Years later, opportunity knocked in an unexpected way. 4 Kentucky Fried Chicken locations were failing badly. They were losing money and on the edge of shutting down. Dave was asked to help fix the problem. Instead of panicking, he simplified everything. He reduced menu clutter and focused on what sold best. He improved operations step by step. He tightened up procedures and trained employees better. Slowly, sales started climbing. Customers noticed the difference immediately. Those locations became profitable again. That moment proved something powerful to Dave. He realized he didn't just understand restaurants, he could transform them. Working with Colonel Sanders was a turning point that sharpened Dave's marketing instincts. The Colonel was a man of tradition, but Dave saw the need for modern efficiency. He convinced the Colonel to reduce the bloated menu to just a few core items. This allowed the kitchen staff to become specialists rather than jacks of all trades. Dave also pushed for the iconic bucket of chicken, realizing that branding was as important as the recipe. He saw that families wanted convenience and a recognizable symbol they could trust. The turnaround of these failing stores was not a stroke of luck, but a result of ruthless simplification. He cut the fat from the business model until only the muscle remained. This success gave him the financial foundation he needed to finally dream bigger. He was no longer just a fixer for other people's brands. He was ready to be the architect of his own vision. In 1969, Dave made the biggest gamble of his life. He decided to open his own restaurant in Columbus, Ohio. He did not have millions in funding. He did not have celebrity endorsements. After putting his savings into the business, he was nearly tapped out. He reportedly had around $40 left to his name. To most people, that would sound terrifying. To Dave, it felt like commitment. He named the restaurant after his daughter, Wendy. That choice made the business deeply personal. Failure was no longer just financial. It was emotional. The first Wendy's location was a modest storefront that stood in stark contrast to the flashy chains of the era. Dave spent his last few dollars on high-quality equipment rather than expensive decor. He spent nights pacing the floor, wondering if the people of Columbus would care about a better burger. The pressure of naming the business after his daughter, Melinda Wendy Thomas, was immense. He knew that if the business folded, he would be failing her legacy as well as his own. Every morning, he arrived before the sun to ensure the beef was delivered fresh. He didn't want a fast food joint. He wanted a quick service restaurant with home-cooked quality. The stakes were absolute, and the margin for error was non-existent. He was betting his entire future on the belief that people could taste honesty. That first day, he stood behind the counter, ready to serve the first customer himself. From the beginning, Wendy's was different by design. Dave refused to serve frozen beef. He made the burger square to symbolize not cutting corners. He kept the menu smaller than competitors to protect consistency. While others expanded rapidly, he refined relentlessly. He believed doing a few things extremely well beats doing many things poorly. Customers quickly tasted the difference. Word of mouth began spreading. Locations started multiplying. Revenue began climbing steadily. Bigger brands started paying attention. What started as a risk became momentum. The square patty became a silent conversation piece that sparked curiosity across the Midwest. People asked why the meat hung off the edges of the bun, and the answer was always quality. Dave wanted the customer to see the main ingredient before they even took a bite. He also pioneered the modern drive-thru, installing a pickup window that changed the industry forever. He obsessed over the speed of the line, timing every transaction with a stopwatch. However, he never allowed speed to come at the expense of a hot, fresh meal. He introduced the Frosty as a signature dessert because he knew people craved a specific kind of nostalgia. The dining room was kept spotless, reflecting the lessons he learned as a 12-year-old dishwasher. He treated his employees like family, knowing that a happy staff created a happy customer. Wendy's wasn't just growing, it was thriving because it had a soul. As the 1970s progressed, the fast food wars began to heat up with intense competition. McDonald's and Burger King were massive titans, but Dave found a niche in the old-fashioned approach. He leaned into the idea that newer wasn't always better, but better was always better. He began to realize that his own story was a powerful tool for building brand loyalty. People wanted to know the man behind the burger, and they responded to his sincerity. He started appearing in local advertisements, speaking directly to the camera with a humble smile. He didn't look like a CEO. He looked like the guy who would fix your car or help you move. This authenticity created a bond with the American public that money couldn't buy. By the time the 1980s arrived, Wendy's was no longer a local favorite. It was a national staple. Dave's face became synonymous with trust and high standards. Over time, Wendy's grew into a global powerhouse. Thousands of locations opened across the country and internationally. Billions of dollars flowed through the company. Dave eventually became the face of the brand in television commercials. His simple, honest presence built trust with customers. But the real success was never just about money. It was about mastery before expansion. It was about discipline before scale. Dave Thomas did not start with wealth. He started with skills and relentless work ethic. He learned the business from the ground up. And that is the real lesson behind the $40. You don't need millions to begin, you need the courage to master your craft and bet on yourself. Even after achieving massive wealth, Dave Thomas never forgot the boy who washed dishes in Knoxville. He spent his later years advocating for adoption, ensuring other children had the chances he was given. He famously went back to earn his GED in 1993 because he wanted to show kids that finishing what you start matters. He remained a constant presence in his restaurants, often stopping by unannounced to check the quality of the fries. He knew that greatness is not a destination you reach, but a standard you maintain every single day. His life proved that your starting point does not define your finish line. The $40 in his pocket in 1969 actually grew into a multi-billion-dollar legacy of service. Today, every square burger served is a reminder of a man who refused to cut corners in life. He showed us that with enough heart and a lot of hard work, anyone can build an empire.